Uh, uh, hello. Can you guys hear me well? Is there anyone here to listen to me? Well, anyways, hello. I forgot to add chat, so that's that. But to whoever's here right now, I hope you all had a pleasant um Christmas Eve with your friends and family. Whatever you did, you know, maybe you were hanging out with your lover, or you spent time alone playing video games, whatever. I hope you had a pleasant Christmas Eve. But um, nonetheless, on my end, it is currently 9:30 p.m. So I figured, um, why not tell you guys a few bedtime stories, huh? Um, so tuck yourself into bed, get comfortable, and let my voice drift you to sleep with some um, how should I say it? Traditional Christmas stories. Yeah. Also, if the BGM is a bit loud, do tell me, cause I'm gonna be completely oblivious. Here we go. Um, the first story goes by the name of The Little Match Girl. A classic one. A story that we've all heard as a kid, whether at school or from our parents. Here we go. It was so terribly cold. Snow was falling, and it was almost dark. Evening came on, the last evening of the year. In the cold and gloom, a poor little girl, bareheaded and barefoot, was walking through the streets. Of course, when she had left her house, she'd had slippers on. But what good had they been? They were very big slippers, way too big for her, for they belonged to her mother. The little girl had lost them running across the road, where two carriages had rattled by terribly fast. One slipper she'd not been able to find again, and a boy had run off with the other, saying he could use it very well as a cradle someday, when he had children of his own. And so the little girl walked on her naked feet, which were quite red and blue from the cold. In an old apron, she carried several packages of matches, and she held a box of them in her hand. No one had bought any from her all day long, and no one had given her a cent. Shivering with cold and hunger, she crept along, a picture of misery. Poor little girl. The snowflakes fell on her long, fair hair, which hung in pretty curls over her neck. In all the windows, lights were shining, and there was a wonderful smell of roast goose, for it was New Year's Eve. Yes, she thought of that. In a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected farther out into the street than the other, she sat down and drew up her little feet under her. She was getting colder and colder, but did not dare to go home, for she had sold no matches, nor earned a single cent, and her father would surely beat her for that. Besides, it was cold at home, for they had nothing over them but a roof through which the wind whistled even though the biggest cracks had been stuffed with straws and rags. Her hands were almost dead with cold, Oh, how much one little match might warm her! If she could only take one from the box and rub it against the wall and warm her hands. She drew one out. Ratch! How it sputtered and burned. It made a warm, bright flame, like a little candle, as she held her hands over it. But it gave a strange light. It really seemed to the little girl as if she was god damn it, sitting before a great iron stove with shining brass knobs and a brass cover. How wonderfully the fire burned. How comfortable it was. The youngster stretched out her feet to warm them too. And then the little flame went out. The stove vanished, and she had only the remains of the burnt match in her hand. She struck another match against the wall. It burned brightly, and then the light fell upon the wall, and when the light fell upon the wall, it became transparent like a thin veil, and she could see through it into a room. On the table, a snow-white cloth was spread, and on it stood a shining dinner service. The roast goose steamed gloriously, stuffed with apples and prunes. And what was still better, the goose jumped down from the dish and waddled along the floor with a knife and fork in its breast, right over to the little girl. Then the match went out, and she could see only the thick, cold wall. She lighted another match. Then she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. It was much larger and much more beautiful than the one she had seen last Christmas through the glass door at the rich merchant's home. Thousands of candles burned on the green branches, and colored pictures like those in the print shops looked down at her. The little girl reached both of her hands towards them. Then the match went out. But the Christmas lights mounted higher. She saw them now as bright stars in the sky. One of them fell down, forming a long line of fire. Now someone's dying, thought the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only person who had loved her and who was now dead, had told her that when the star fell down, a soul went up to God. She rubbed another match against the wall. It became bright again, and in the glow, the old grandmother stood clear and shining, kind and lovely. "Grandmother," cried the child, "oh, take me with you. I know you will disappear when the match is burned out. You will vanish like the warm stove, the wonderful roast goose, and the big, beautiful Christmas tree." She quickly struck the whole bundle of matches, for she wished to keep her grandmother with her. And the matches burned with such a glow that it became brighter than daylight. Grandmother had never been so grand and beautiful. She took the little girl in her arms, and both of them flew in brightness and joy above the earth, very, very high. And up there was neither cold nor hunger, nor fear. They were with God. But in the corner, leaning against the wall, sat the little girl with red cheeks and smiling mouth, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. The New Year's sun rose upon the little pathetic figure. The child sat there, stiff and cold, holding the matches, of which one bundle was almost burned. She wanted to warm herself, the people said. No one imagined what beautiful things she had seen, and how happily she had gone with her old grandmother into the bright new year. End of story. Well, nothing that you guys would be unfamiliar with, I would say. But still, an incredibly sad story, and extremely hard to read from what I remember as well. Probably because I'm using a website that translate this thing for free. Because Anderson wrote this in what? Dutch? German. I don't know actually. Another language that's not English, and the translation seems a bit rough. But anyways, that's the end of that story. So let's quickly move on to the next. Um, the following story is named A Child's Christmas in Wales, written by Dylan Thomas. One Christmas was so much like the other. In those years around the Seatown corner now, out of all sound except the distant speaking of the voices I sometimes hear a moment before sleep, that I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6. By the way, I had no practice before this, so it might seem a bit rough whenever I try to read. But anyways, continue. All the Christmases rolled down towards the too long-tongued sea, like a cold and headlong moon bundling down the sky that was our street. And they stop at the rim of the ice edge, fish freezing waves. I plunge my hand in the snow and bring out whatever I could find. In goes my hand into that wool-white, bell-tongued ball of holidays, resting at the rim of the carol-singing sea. And out comes Miss Prothero and the fireman. It was on the afternoon of the day of the Christmas Eve, and I was in Mr. Prothero's garden. Mrs. Prothero's garden, waiting for cats with her son Jim. It was snowing. It was always snowing at Christmas. December, in my memory, is white as Lapland, although there were no reindeers, but there were cats, patient, cold, and callous. Our hands wrapped in socks, we wait to snowball the cats, sleek and long as jaguars, and horrible whiskered, spitting and snarling. They would slide and slide over the white-black garden walls, and the lynx-eyed hunters, Jim and I, fur-capped and moccasined trappers from Hudson Bay off Mumbles Road would hurl our deadly snowballs at the green of their eyes. Oh my god, this is not how you treat animals, guys. The wise cats never appeared. We were so still. Eskimo-footed Arctic marksmen in the muffling silence of the eternal snow. Eternal ever since Wednesday, that we never heard Miss Prothero's first cry of her igloo at the bottom of the garden. Or, if we heard it at all, it was to us, like the far-off challenge of our enemy and prey, the neighbor's polar cat. But soon the voice grew louder. "Fire!" cried Miss Prothero, and she beat the dinner gong. And we ran down the garden, with the snowballs in our arms towards the house, and smoke indeed was pouring out of the dining room, and the gong was bombilitating. And Miss Prothero was announcing ruin like a town crier in Pompeii. This was better than all the cats in Wales standing on the wall in a row. We bounded into the house, laden with snowballs, and stopped at the open door of the smoke-filled room. What the fuck was Miss Prothero doing? Something was burning, all right. Perhaps it was Mr. Prothero, who always slept there after midday dinner with a newspaper over his face. Mr. Prothero, rather. But he was standing in the middle of the room saying, "A fine Christmas," and smacking the smoke with a slipper. "Call the fire brigade," cried Miss Prothero as she beat the gong. "They won't be here," said Mr. Prothero. "It's Christmas." Lamau indeed. There was no fire to be seen, only clouds of smoke and Mr. Prothero standing in the middle of them, waving his slippers as though he were conducting. "Do something," he said, and we threw all of our snowballs into the smoke. I think we missed Mr. Prothero and ran out of the house to the telephone box. "Let's call the police as well," Jim said. "And the ambulance. And Ernie Jenkins." He likes he likes fires. But we only called the fire brigade, and soon the fire engine came and 3 tall men in helmets brought a hose into the house, and Mr. Prothero got out just in time before they turned it on. Nobody could have had a noisier Christmas Eve. And when the firemen turned off the hose and were standing in the wet, smoky room, Jim's aunt, Miss Prothero, came downstairs and peered in at them. Jim and I waited very quietly to hear what she would say to them. She said the right thing, always. She looked at the 3 tall firemen in their shining helmets, standing among the smoke and cinders and dissolving snowballs, and she said, Would you like anything to read?" Would you like anything to read? Okay. I guess I'll ignore that. Years and years ago, when I was a boy, when there were wolves in Wales and birds in the color of red fennel petticoats. Birds the color of red flannel petticoats whiskered past the harp-shaped hills. When we sang and wallowed all night and day in caves that smelt like Sunday afternoon in damp farmhouse parlors, and we chased, with the jawbones of deacons, the English, and the bears. Before the motor car, before the wheel, before the Duchess face horse. When we rode the daft and happy hills bareback, it snowed and it snowed. But here a small boy says, "It snowed last year too. I made a snowman, and my brother knocked it down, and I knocked my brother's down." And then we had tea. What is this random ass timeline of events? But that was not the same snow, I say. Our snow was not only shaken from the whitewash buckets down the sky. It came shoaling out of the ground and swam and drifted out of the arms and hands and bodies of the trees. Snow grew overnight on the roof of the house like a pure grandfather moss. Minutely, evied the walls and settled on the postman, opening the gate like a dumb thunderstorm of white torn Christmas cards. Was the postman there too? With sprinkling eyes and wind-cherried nose, on spread, frozen feet, they crunch up to the doors and mitten on them manfully. But all that the children could hear was a ringing of bells. You mean that the postman went rat-tat-tat and the doors rang? I mean that the bells and the children could hear. I mean that the bells that the children could hear were inside them. I only hear thunder sometimes, never bells. There were church bells too. Inside them? No. In the black, snow-white belfries, tucked in by bishops and storks, and they rang their tidings over a bandaged town, over the frozen foam of the powder and ice cream hills over the crackling sea. It seemed that all the churches boomed for joy under my window, and the weathercocks crew for Christmas on our friends. I do not know what's happening in this story right now. I'm just reading words. But anyways, get back get back to the postman. They were just ordinary postmen, fond of walking dogs and Christmas and the snow. They knock on the doors with blue knuckles. R has got a black knocker, and they stood on the white welcoming mat in the little drifted porches and huffed and puffed, making ghosts with their breath, and jogged from foot to foot like small boys wanting to go out. And then the presents. And then the presents. After the Christmas box, and the cold postman with a rose on his button nose tingled down the tea tray slithered run of the chilly, glinting hill. He went in his ice-bound boots. He went in his ice-bound boots like a man on fishmonger's slabs. He wagged his back like a frozen camel's hump, dizzily turned the corner on one foot, and by God, he was gone. Get back to the presents. There were the useful presents, engulfing mufflers on the old coach days, and mittens made for giant slots, zebra scarves of a substance like silky gum that could be tug-of-warred down to the galoshes, blinding tam o' shanters like patchwork tea coziness, and bunny-suited busbies, and balanclavas for victims of head-shrinking tribes. When was this written? 2008, 1895? What Shakespeare language is this? Where was I? Yes. There were useful presents, engulfing mufflers of the old coach days, and mittens made for giant sloths, zebra scarves for a substance like silky gum. Zebra scarves of a substance like silky gum that could be tug-of-warred down like galoshes. Blinding tam o' shanters like patchwork tea cozies, and bunny-suited busbies, and balaclavas for victims of head-shrinking tribes, from aunts who always wore wool next to the skin. There were mustache and rasping vests that make you wonder why the aunts had any skin left at all. And once I had a little crotch nose bag from an aunt now, alas, no longer whinnying with us, and pictureless books in which small boys, though worn with quotations not to woods, skate on Farmer's Glides Pond, and drowned, and books that told me everything about the wasps, except why. Yeah, was this guy like on drugs writing this thing, or am I just bad? No matter. Go on to the useless presents. Bag of moist and many-colored jelly babies, and a folded flag, and a false nose, and a tram conductor's cap, and a machine that punched tickets and rang a bell. Never a catapult. Once, by a mistake that no one could explain, a little hatchet, and a little celluloid duck that made, when you pressed it, a most unduck-like sound, a mewing moo that an ambitious cat might make who wished to be a cow, and a painting and a painting book in which I could make the grass, the trees, the sea, and the animals any color I please. And still, the dazzling sky, blue sheep are grazing in the red field under the rainbow-billed and pea-green birds. Hard, hard-boiled toffee, fudge, and all sorts crunches, cracknel, humbugs, glaciers, marzipan, and butterwelsh for the Welsh, and troops of bright tin soldiers who, if they could not fight, could always run. Ugh, I am beyond confused on where this story is heading. First, there was a fire, and then there was a postman, and now they're just listing off gifts that I can't pronounce. Let me continue. Let's finish this somehow. Where was I? Useless presents. Ah, yes. And a painting book in which I could make the grass, the trees, the sea, and the animals any color I please. And still, the dazzling sky blue sheep are grazing in the red field under the rainbow-billed and pea-green birds. Hard-boiled toffee, fudge, and all sorts. Hard-boiled toffee, fudge, and all sorts. Crunches, cracknel, humbugs, glaciers, marzipan, and butterwelsh for the Welsh. And troops of bright tin soldiers who, if they could not fight, could always run. And snake and families and happy ladders? And easy hobby games for little engineers. Complete with instructions. Oh, easy for Leonardo. And a whistle to make the dogs bark, to wake up the old man next door, to make him beat on the wall with a stick to shake our picture off the wall. And a packet of cigarettes. You put one in your mouth and you stood at the corner of the street and you waited for hours in vain for an old lady to scold you for smoking a cigarette. And then with a smirk, you ate it. And then it was breakfast under the balloons. Oh, the amount of confusion, sarcasm, and metaphors I'm getting from this story right here is too much for my brain to handle right now. What the heck? Continuing. Were there uncles like in our house? There were always uncles at Christmas. True. The same uncles, and on Christmas mornings, with dog disturbing whistle and sugar fags, I would scour and swath town. I would scour the I would scour the swath town for the news of the little world and find always a dead bird by the white post office or by the deserted swings. Perhaps a robin, all but one of his fires out. Men and women wadding, scooping back from chapel, with tapeworm noses and wind bush cheeks. All albinos huddled their stiff back, black jarring feathers against their irre, irrelig- irreligious snow. Oh my god, I am I am so sorry guys. I'm struggling madly on this one. Mistletoe hung from the gas brackets with all the front parlors. There were sherry and walnuts and bottled beer and crackers by the desert spoons, and cats in their furabouts watched the fires, and the high heaped fire and the high heaps fire spat, all ready for the chestnut and the mulling pokers. Some few large men sat in the front of parlors, without their collars, uncles most certainly, trying their new cigars, holding them out judiciously at arm's length, returning them to their mouth, coughing, then holding them out again as though waiting for the explosion. And some few small ants, not wanted in the kitchen, nor anywhere else for that matter, sat on the very edges of their chairs, poised and brittle, afraid to break, like faded cups and saucers. Oh hey Zaf, welcome to the very scuff um, Christmas story reading stream. Unexpected tongue twisting word. You can say that again. Not many those mornings trot the piling streets. An old man always, fawn ballard, yellow glove, and at this time of year, with spats of snow, would take his constitutional to the white bowling green and black and back, as he would take it wet on. Oh, why? Merry Christmas. Okay, let me read this paragraph again. I feel guilty for putting you guys through the torture that is my horrible pacing. Not many those mornings trot the piling street. An old man always, fawn ballard, yellow glove, and at this time of year, with spats of snow, would take his constitutional to the white bowling green and back, as he would take it wet or fine on Christmas Day or Doomsday. Sometimes two hale young men with big pipes blazing, no overcoats, and wind-blown scarf would trudge, unspeaking, down to the forlorn sea, to work up an appetite, to blow away the fumes, who knows? To walk into the waves until nothing of them was left but the two curling smoke clouds of their inextinguishable briars. Then I would be slap-dashing home, the gravy smell of the dinners of others, the bird smell, the brandy, the pudding and mince, coiling up to my nostrils. When out of a snow-clogged side lane would come a boy, the spit of myself, with a pink-tipped cigarette and the violet pass of a black eye, cocky as a bullfinch, leering all to himself. I hated him on sight and sound, and would be about to put my dog whistle to my lips and blow him off the face of Christmas, when suddenly he, with a violet wink, put his whistle to his lips and blew so stridently, so high, so exquisitely loud, that gobbling faces, their cheek bulged with the goose, would press against their tinselled windows the whole length of the white echoing street. The whole length of the white echoing street. For dinner, we had turkey and blazing pudding, and after dinner, the uncle sat in front of the. What happened to the fucking boy then? I. What? This makes no sense. For dinner, we had turkey and blazing pudding, and after dinner, the uncles sat in front of the fire, loosened all buttons, and put their large moist hand over their watch chains, groaned a little, and then slept. Mothers, aunts, and sisters scuttled to and front, bearing turins. Aunt Bessie, who had already been frightened twice by a clockwork mouse, whimpered at the sideboard and had some elderberry wine. The dog was sick. Auntie Doozy had to have 3 aspirins, but Auntie Hannah, who liked port, stood in the middle of the snowbound black backyard. But Auntie Hannah, who liked port, stood in the middle of the snowbound backyard, singing like a big bosomed thrush. I could blow up balloons to see how big they would blow up to, and when they burst, which they all did, the uncles jumped and rumbled. In the rich and heavy afternoon, the uncles breathing like dolphins and snow descending, I would sit among the festoons and the Chinese lanterns and nibble dates and try to make a model man of war, following the instructions for little engineers, and produce what might be mistaken for a sea-going tramcar. Or I would go out, my bright new boots squeaking, into the white world, onto the seaward hill, to call on Jimmy and Dan and Jack, and to pat through the still street, leaving huge deep footprints on the hidden pavements. I bet people will think there have been hippos. What would you do if you saw hippo coming down our street? I would fucking run. Hippos are scary. I'd go like this. Bang! I'd throw him over the railings and roll him down the hill, and I'll tickle him under the ear and he'd wag his tail. What would you do if you saw 2 hippos? Iron flank and bellowing he-hippos clanked and battered through the scudding snow towards us as he passed Mr. Daniel's house. Let's post Mr. Daniel a snowball through his letterbox. Let's write things in the snow. Let's write, Mr. Daniel looks like a spaniel all over his lawn. Or we walked on the white shore. Can the fishes see it snowing? The silent one-clouded heavens drifted onto the sea. Now we were snowblind travelers lost on the North Hills, and vast dilapidated dogs, with flasks around their necks, and shambled up to us, baying Excelsior. We returned home through the poor streets where only a few children fumbled with bare red fingers into the wheel-rutted snow and catcalled after us, their voices fading away as we trudged uphill into the cries of the dock birds and the hooting of the ship out in the whirling bay. That's the only sentence that I have found making any sense in this story so far. And then, at tea, the recovered uncles would be jolly, and the ice cake loomed in the center of the table like a marble grave. Auntie Hannah laced her tea with rum because it was only once a year. Bring out the tall tales now that we told. Bring out the tall tales now that we were told by the fire, and the gaslight bubbled like a diver. Ghosts whooled like owls in the long nights when I dared not to look over my shoulders. Animals lurked in the cubbyhole under the stairs where the gas meter ticked. And I remember that we went singing carol once. when there wasn't a when there wasn't the shaving of a moonlight in the flying street. Ah, wait. No. And I remember that we went singing carols once when there wasn't the shaving of a moon to light the flying streets. At the end of the road was a drive that led to a large house, and we stumbled in up the darkness of the drive that night. Each one of us afraid, each one holding a stone in his hand in case each one holding a stone in his hand just in case, and all of us too brave to say a word. The wind through the trees made noises as of old and unpleasant, and maybe web-footed man wheezing in case. We reached the black bulk of the house. What shall we give them? Hark the herald. What shall we give them? Hark the herald. That's an amazing title. Hark the herald. No, Jack said. Good King Wenceslas. I'll count three. One, two, three. And we began to sing. Our voices high and seemingly distant in the snow-felted darkness around the house that was occupied by nobody we knew. We stood close together, near the dark door. And then a small, dry voice, like the voice of someone who has not spoken for a long time, joined our singing. A small, dry, eggshell voice from the other side of the door. A small, dry voice through the keyhole. And then we stopped running. We were outside our house. The front room was lovely. The balloons floated under the hot water bottle gulping gas. Everything was good again and shone over the town. Perhaps it was a ghost, Jim said. Perhaps it was trolls, Dan said, who was always reading. Let's go in and see if there's any jelly left, said Jack, and we did just that. Always on Christmas night there was music. An uncle played the fiddle, a cousin sang Cherry Ripe, and another uncle sang Drake's Drum. It was very warm in the little house. Uncle Hannah, who had got onto the parsnip, Auntie Hannah, who had got onto the parsnip wine, sang a song about bleeding hearts and death. And then another in which she said her heart was like a bird's nest. And then everybody laughed again. And then I went to bed, looking through my bedroom window out into the moonlight and the unending smoke-colored snow. I could see the lights in the windows of all the other houses on our hill and hear the music rising from them up the long, steadily falling night. I turned the gas down, got into bed. I said some words to the close and holy darkness, and then I slept. I hated that. What more can I say? I hated that story. What do you guys think? Huh? Uh, yeah, I think I might need to rethink what the lore was in that story. I need a whole MatPats video to theorize what the fuck happened in that story. ca- could any of you keep up? Cause I'm the one reading and I could not. Anyone? Fever dream. You said it. You said it. One thing happened after the another. My God. All right. Let's forget that let's forget I ever told that story and move on to the next. Okay. Um this one looks relatively short. The following story goes by the name of The Gift of the Magi, written by O. Henry. $1.87. That was all. And 60 cents of it was in pennies. Hang on, I need to zoom in because the fonts are small. Here we go again. $1.87. That was all. And 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies save 1 and 2 at a time by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until one's cheeks burn with the silent imputation of parsimony that such loose dealing implied. 3 times Della counted it, $1.87, and the next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but flop down onto the shabby little couch and howl. So Della did it, which instigate the moral reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles, and smiles, with sniffles predominating. While the mistress of the home is gradually subsiding from the first stage of the second to the second, take a look at the home. A furnished flat at $8 per week. It did not exactly beggar description, but it certainly had a word on the lookout for mendicancy SWAT, for the mendicancy SWAT. In the vestibule below was a letterbox into which no letter would go, and an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Also, appertaining a Toronto was a cart bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. The Dillingham had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, though, they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming D. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim, and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, who already introduced to you as Della, which is all very good. Della finished her cry and attended to her cheeks with a powder rag. She stood by the window and looked out dully at a gray cat walking a gray fence in a gray backyard. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87 with which to buy Jim a present. She had been saving every penny she could for months. With this result, she had been saving every penny she could for months. With this result, $20 a week doesn't go far. Expenses had been greater than she had calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him. Something fine and rare and sterling. Something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. There was a pier glass between the windows of the room, Perhaps you have seen a pier glass in an $8 flat. A very thin and very agile person may, by observing his reflection in a rapid sequence of longitu- longi- lo- long, longitudinal strips, lo- longitudinal strips, obtain a very accurate conception of its looks. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly, she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face has lost its color within 20 seconds. Rapidly, she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now, there were two possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs, in which they both looked a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Had the Queen of Sheba lived in the flat across the air shaft, Della would have let her hair hang down the window someday to dry, just to depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gift. Had King Solomon been the janitor, with all his treasures piled up in the basement, Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed, just to see him plucked at his beard from envy. So now, Della's beautiful hair fell about her rippling and shining light cascade of brown waters. It reached below her knee and made itself almost a garment for her. And she did it up again nervously and quickly. Once she faltered for a minute and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet. Splash! Once she faltered for a minute and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet. On went her old brown jacket. On went her old brown hat. With a whirl of skirts and with the brilliant sparkle still in her eyes, she fluttered out to the door and down the stairs to the street, where she stopped and signed read, MME, so frowny, hair goods of all kind. One flight up, Della ran, and collected herself, panting. Madame, large, too white, chilly, hardly look, the Sophrony. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Madame. Take your hat off and let's have a sight at the looks of it. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madame, lifting the mask with a practiced hand. Give it to me, quick, said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. Forget the hash metaphor. She was ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There were no other like it in any of the stores. And she had turned all of them inside out. It was a platinum food chain symbol. Wait, let me read that again. It was a platinum food chain, simple and chaste in design, popularly proclaiming its value by substance alone and not by meretricious ornamentation, as all good things should do. It was even worthy of the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim's. It was just like him. Quietness and value. The description applied to both. $21 they took from her for it, and she hurried home with the 87 cents left. With that chain on his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes looked at it on the sly on account of the old leather strap that he used in place of a chain. When Della reached home, her intoxication gave way a little to to prudence and reason. She got out of her curling irons and lightened the gas and went on to work repairing the ravages made by generosity added to love, which is always a tremendous task. Dear friends, a mammoth task. With 45 minutes, her head was covered in tiny, loose-lying curls that made her look wonderfully like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror long, carefully, and critically. If Jin doesn't kill me, she said to herself, before he takes a second look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what would I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove. Stove? What's wrong with me? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of a stove, hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubled for the food chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table, near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his step on the stairs, away down on the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit of saying a little silent prayer about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please God, make him think I'm still pretty." The door opened, and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22, and to be burdened with a family. He needed a new overcoat, and he was without gloves. Jim stopped inside the door, as immovable as a setter on the scent of a quail. Jim stopped inside the door, as immovable as a setter and at the scent of quail. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not the anger, it was nor surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly, with a peculiar expression on his face. Della ringed off the table and went for him. No, not ring. Della wriggled off the table and went for him. "Jim, darling," she cried, "don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It'll grow out again. You don't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Says Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I've got for you." "You've cut off your hair?" asked Jim laboriously, as if he had not arrived at the patent fact that yet even after the hardest mental labor. "Cut it off and sold it," said Della. "Don't you like me just as well, anyhow? I'm me without my hair, ain't I?" Jim looked around the room curiously. "You say your hair is gone?" he said, with an air almost idiocy. "You needn't look for it," said Della. "It's sold, I tell you. Sold and gone, too. It's Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me, for it went for you. Maybe the hair of my head were numbered," she went on with sudden seriousness and sweetness. "But nobody could ever count my love for you. Shall I put the chops on, Jim?" Give me a moment. I'll be back in just 20 seconds. Alright, I'm back. Where was I? Wait, where was I? I don't see it anymore. Oh god. Excuse me. What? Where is it? Huh? Yeah, I found it. Whew, crisis averted. Let me continue. A small fian. Indeed, I'm aware that it happens whenever I stand up, but what can I do? Where was I? Ah, out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He unfolded his Della. For 10 seconds, let us regard with discreet scrutiny with some inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week or $1 million a year. What is the difference? A mathematician or a wit would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. This dark assertion will be illuminated later on. Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it upon the table. "Don't make any mistake, Dell," he said, "about me. I don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut or a shave or a shampoo that could make me like my girl any less. But if you unwrap that package, you may see why you had me going a while at first." Excuse me. White fingers and nimble tore at the strings and paper. And then an ecstatic scream of joy. And then, alas, a quick feminine change to hysterical tears and wails, necessitating an immediate employment of all the comforting powers of the lord of the flat. For there lay the combs, the set of combs, side and back, that Della had worshipped long in a Broadway window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoise shell with jeweled rims. Just the shade to wear in the beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers. But the tresses that should have adorned the coveted adornments were gone. But she hugged them from her bosom, and at length she was able to look up with dim eyes and a smile and say, "My hair grows so fast, Jim." And then Della leaped up like a little singed cat and cried, "Oh, oh." Jim had not said he had seen his beautiful present. She held it out for him eagerly upon her open palm. The dull, precious metal seemed to flash with the reflection of her bright and ardent spirit. "Isn't it a dandy, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at the time for 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down onto the couch and put his hand under the back of his head and smiled. "Dell," said he, "let's put our Christmas presents away and keep them a while. They're too nice for us to use as presents. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your comb. And now, suppose you put the chops on." The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in case of duplication. And here I have lamely related to you to the uneventful chronicles of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrifice for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that all who gives gi- that all who gives gifts, and two were the wisest of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are the wisest. Everywhere they are the wisest. They are the magi. Boy, this one is just sad. This one is painful. Oh my god, this is like what? What example should I give? This is like buying a keyboard for a friend that you knew. This is like buying a keyboard for a friend and you found out that they sold their computer just a few days ago. Pretty, pretty poor metaphor, but you know what I mean. This is sad. But hey, I think I've heard of this one actually. Didn't I didn't actually recognize it at first, but that was really sweet. You say, huh? Well, it was pretty sweet, but a bit, quite a bit sad as well, if you know what I mean. It was pretty sweet. I would agree. It was pretty sweet. Yeah. But moving on. Um, I think I had a few left in store for you guys. Um, all right. So this is a whole compilation of this next one that I'm reading, by the way. It's a whole compilation of five. Oh wait, not five. 6 Christmas stories written by Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens. I wonder where I've heard the name before. My god. All right, let's see if these ones are as confusing as the one I've read before. Let me take a deep breath first. A little water break, if you will. Ah, fuck! I'm out of water. So how were you guys' Christmas Eve? Had plenty of good food. I bet you did. We'll start drinking soon. Why not right away? What's stopping you from drinking right now? Hmm? Right, right, right. Oh shit, I think my folks are home. Give me a moment. All right, I'm back. uh, how long did that take? Did you guys miss me? Miss me? I'm sure you did. Let me get rid of this thing real quick. All right. So, where was I? Yes, the short Christmas stories written by Charles Dickens, isn't it? Yeah, there are a total of 6 stories I can see here. Uh, 6 pretty reasonably length stories, so I might just read all of them. All right. Without further ado, let's sorry to keep you guys waiting. I keep having to be quiet because reasons. But yeah, on to the first story. The first short story written by Charles Dickens is called A Christmas Tree. Here goes. I have been looking on this evening at a merry company of children assembled around that pretty German toy, a Christmas tree. The tree was planted in the middle of the great round table and towered high above their heads. It was brilliantly lighted with a multitude of little tapers, and everywhere sparkled and glittered with bright objects. There were rosy cheeked dolls hiding behind the green leaves, and there were real watches with movable hands, at least, and an endlessly capacity of being wound up, dangling from innumerable twigs. There were French polished tables, chairs, bedsteads, wardrobes, 8-day clocks, and various other articles of domestic furniture, wonderfully made in tin at Wolverhampton. Perched among the boughs, as if in preparation for some fairy housekeeping, there were jolly, broad-faced little men, much more agreeable in appearance than many real men, and no wonder, for their heads took off, and showed them to be full of sugar plums. There were fiddles and drums. There were tambourines, books, work boxes, paint boxes, sweetmeat boxes, peep show boxes, and all kinds of boxes. There were trinkets for the elder girls, far brighter than any grown of gold and jewels. There were baskets and pincushions in all devices. There were guns, swords, and banners. There were witches standing in enchanted rings of pasteboard, to tell fortunes. There were teetotums, humming tops, needle cases, pen wipers, smelling bottles, conversation cards, bouquet holders, real pasteboard, to tell fortunes. There were wait, no. I read the same line again. There were teetotums, humming tops, needle cases, pen wipers, smelling bottles, conversation cards, bouquet holders, real fruit, made artificially dazzling in gold leaf, imitation apples, pears, and walnuts, crammed with surprises. In short, as a pretty child before me delightfully whispered to another pretty child, her bosom friend, there was everything and more. This motley collection of odd objects clustering on the tree like magic fruit, and flashing back the bright looks directed towards it from every side. Some of the diamond eyes admiring it were hardly on the level with the table, and a few were languishing in timid wonder on the bosoms of pretty mothers, aunts, and nurses, made a lively realization of the fancies of childhood, and set me thinking how all the trees that grow and all the things that come into existence on the earth have their own wild adornments at that well remembered time. Being now at home again and alone, the only person in the house awake, my thoughts are drawn back by fascination which I do not care to resist, to my own childhood. I begin to consider, what do we all remember best upon the branches of the Christmas tree of our own young Christmas days, by which we climb to real life? Straight in the middle of the room, crammed in the freedom of its growth, by no encircling walls or a soon reaching ceiling, a shadowy tree arises, and looking up into the dreamy brightness of its top. For I observe in this tree in the singular uh, for I observe in this tree the singular property that it appears to grow downwards towards the earth. I look into my youngest Christmas recollections. All toys at first I find. Up yonder, among the green holly and red berries, is the tumbler with his hands in his pockets, who wouldn't lie down, but whether he was put upon the floor, persisted in rolling his fat body about, until he rolled himself still, and brought those lobster eyes of his to bear upon me, when I affected to laugh very much, but in my heart of hearts was extremely doubtful of him. Close beside him is that infernal snuff box, out of which there sprang a dem, demonia, demonia, demonical, sprang a demonical counselor in a black gown with an obnoxious head of hair and a red cloth mouth wide open, who was not to be endured on any terms, but could not be put away either, for he used suddenly, in a highly magnified state, to fly out of Mammoth snuff boxes in dreams, when least expected. Nor is the frog in cobbler's wax on his tail far off, for there was no knowing where he wouldn't jump. And when he flew over the candle and came upon one's hand with that spotted back, red on a green ground, he was horrible. The cardboard lady in a blue silk skirt, who was stood up against the candlestick to dance, and whom I see on the same branch, was milder and was beautiful. But I can't say as much for the larger cardboard man, who used to be hung against the wall and pulled by a string. There was a sinister expression in that nose of his, and when he got his legs round his neck, which he very often did, he was ghastly, and not a creature to be alone with. Poor cardboard man, absolutely being roasted by Charles Dickens right now. When did that dreadful mask first look at me? Who put it on? And why was I so frightened that the sight of it is in an era in my life? It is not a it is not a hideous visage in itself. It is even meant to be droll. Why then were its solid features so intolerable? Surely not because it hid the wearer's face. An apron would have done as much. And though I should have preferred even the apron anyway, and though I should have preferred even the apron away, it would not have been absolutely insupportable like the mask. Was it the immovability of the mask? The doll's face was immovable, but I was not afraid of her. Perhaps that's that fixed and set change coming over a real face, infused into my quickened heart some remote suggestions and dread of the universal change that is to come onto every face and make it still. Nothing reconciled me to it. No drummers from whom proceeded a melan me, mela, melanchol me, I forgot how to read this word. Melan mel, me, melacon melancholy. I forgot how to read this word. Guys, how do I spell this? How do I pronounce this? Melacony? Melancholy? No, no, wait. It's not me, it's Lee. Melancholy? Nothing reconciled me to it. No drummers from whom proceeded a melancholy chirping on the turning of a handle. No regiment of soldiers with a mute band taken out of a box and fitted one by one upon a stiff and lazy little set of lazy tongs. No old woman made of wires and a brown paper composition cutting up a pie for two small children could give me a permanent comfort for a long time. Can I spell it? It's actually let me type it out in chat. Yeah. Uh anyways, please do let me continue. No old woman made of wires and a brown paper composition cutting up a pie for two small children could give me a permanent comfort for a long time. Nor was it any satisfaction to be shown the mask and see that it was made of paper, or to have it locked up and be assured that no one wore it. The mere recollection of that fixed face, the mere knowledge of its existence anywhere, was sufficient to awake me in the night. All per The mere knowledge of its existence anywhere was sufficient to awake me in the night, all perspiration and horror. Perspiration and horror with, oh, I know it's coming. Oh, the mask. Melancholy. Melancholy. Yeah, I read it correctly. Yes! My language instinct strikes again. Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. Yeah, yeah, I know that anime, but I've just at the time I forgot how to read that word. Anyways, continuing. I never wondered what the dear old donkey with the pen. I never wondered what the dear old donkey with the panniers. There he is, was made of then. His height was real to the touch, I recollect, and the great black horse with the round red spots all over him, the horse that I could even get upon. I never wondered what had brought him to that strange condition, or thought that such a horse was not commonly seen at Newmarket. The four horses of no color next to him, that went into the wagon of cheeses and could be taken out and stapled under the piano appeared to have bits of fur tippet for their tails and other bits for their manes, and to stand on pegs instead of legs. But it was not so when they were brought home for Christmas presents. They were all right then. Neither was the harness unceremoniously nailed to their chests, as appears to be the case now. The tinkling works of the music cart, I did find out to be made of quill toothpicks and wire. I always thought that the little tumbler in his shirt sleeve, perpetually swarming up one side of a wooden frame and coming down, head foremost on the other, rather a weak-minded person, though good-natured. But the Jacob's ladder next to him, made of little squares of red wood that went flapping and clattering over one another, each developing a different picture, and the whole and and ah and each developing a different picture, and the whole enlivened by small bells, and was a mighty marvel and a great delight. The dollhouse, of which I was not a proprietor, but where I visited. I don't admire the houses of Parliament half so much as that stone-frowned mansion. Let me start that sentence again. Hi Mia, welcome to the stream. Yes, I'm reading stories. Let me read that part again. The dollhouse, of which I was not a proprietor, but where I visited. I don't admire the houses of Parliament half so much as that stone-frowned mansion with real glass windows and doorsteps and a real balcony, greener than I ever see now, except at watering places, and even they afford but a poor imitation. And though it did open all at once, the entire house front, which was blown, I admit, as cancelling in the fiction of a staircase, it was put to shut it up again. And I could believe, even open, there were 3 distinct rooms in it, a sitting room and bedroom, elegantly furnished, and best of all, a kitchen with uncommonly soft fire irons, a plentiful assortment of in diminutive utensils. Oh, the warming pan, and a tin man cook in profile, who was always going to fry 2 fish. What Barmecide justice have I done to the noble feast wherein the set of wooden platters figured, each with its own peculiar delicacy, as ham or turkey, glued tight onto it, and garnished with something green, which I recollect as moss. Could all the temperance societies of these later days, united, give me such a tea drinking as I have had through the means of yonder little set of blue crockery, which really would not hold liquid? It ran out of the small wooden cask, I recollect, and tasted of matches, and which made tea nectar. And if the 2 legs of the ineffectual little sugar tongs did tumble over one another, and what purpose, like Punch hand, does it matter? And if I once shriek out as a poisoned child and strike the fashionable company with consternation by reasoning of having drunk a little teaspoon, inadvertently dissolved into hot tea. I was never the worse for it, except by a powder. Which company made this dollhouse? Bro is straight up drinking phosphorus. Holy crap. Holy crap. Anyways, upon the next branches of trees, lower down, hard by the green roller and miniature gardening tools, how thick the books begin to hang. Thin books in themselves at first, but many of them, and with deliciously smooth covers of bright red or green. What fat black letters to begin with? A was an archer and shot a frog. Of course he has. He was an apple pie also, and there he is. He was a good many things in his time. Was A, and so were most of his friends, except X, who had so little versatility that I never knew him to get beyond Xerxes or Xantipped, like Y, who was always confined to a yacht or a yew tree, and Z, condemned forever to be a zebra or a zanny. But now, the very tree itself changes and becomes a beanstalk, the marvelous beanstalk of which Jack climbed to the giant's house. And now, those dreadfully interesting double-headed giants, with their clubs over their shoulders, shoulders, yeah, with their clubs over their shoulders, begin to stride along the bounds in a perfect throng, dragging knights and ladies home for dinner by the hair of their necks. And Jack, how noble, with a sword of sharpness and a shoe of swiftness. Again of those meditations come upon me as I gaze at him, and I debate within myself whether there was more than one Jack, which I am loth to believe possible, or only one genuine, original, admirable Jack, who achieved all the recorded exploits. My throat is getting a bit raspy, so you might you might hear me coughing from time to time. I went to okay, a small story break. I went to a um Hololive fan offline meeting today, and I screamed at the top of my lungs things that I'm not proud of. I think you guys could guess what what I screamed, but like yeah, that's part of the reason why my throat is feeling raspy and rather a bit itchy. Drink water, I am. How about I drink your water, huh? Give me your water, come. You scream your desires to be dominated to be by a clock woman. No. Unfortunately not, assassins. Unfortunately not. But anyways, let's continue. Oh my god, my throat. Good for Christmas time is the ruddy color of the cloak, in which the tree making a forest of itself for her to trip through with her basket. Little Red Riding Hood comes to me one Christmas Eve to give me information of the cruelty and treachery of that disassembling wolf who ate her grandmother without making any impressions on his appetite, and then ate her. After making that ferocious joke about his teeth, she was my first love. Uh, Excuse me? Little Red Riding Hood was this guy first love. Um, I'm not gonna judge. She was my first love. I felt that if I could have married Little Red Riding Hood, I should have known perfect bliss, but it was not to be. And there was nothing for it but to look out the wolf in Noah's Ark there, and put him late in the procession on the table, as a monster who was to be degraded. Oh, the wonderful Noah's Ark. It was it was not found seaworthy when put in a washing tub, and the animals were crammed in at the roof, and needed to have their legs well shaken down before they could have gotten in, even there. And then, 10 to 1, but they decide to tumble out at the door, which was but imperfectly fastened by a wire latch. But but what was that against it? Consider consider the noble fly, a size or two smaller than the elephant, the ladybird, the butterfly, all triumphs of art. Consider the goose, whose feet were so small and whose balance was so indifferent that he usually tumbled forward and knocked down all the animals' creation. Consider Noah and his family like idiotic tobacco stoppers, and how the leopards stuck to worm little fingers, and how the tails of the larger animals used gradually to resolve themselves into fray bits of string. Hush! Again a forest, and somebody up in a tree. Not Robin Hood, not Valentine, not the yellow dwarf, but an eastern king with a glittering scimitar and turban. By Allah, two eastern kings, for I see another, looking over his shoulder. Down upon the grass, at the tree's foot, lies the full length of a coal-black giant, stretched asleep, with his head and in a lady's lap. And near them is a glass box, fastened with four locks of shining steel, in which he keeps the lady prisoner when he is awake. I see the four keys at his girdle now. The lady makes signs of the two kings in the tree, who softly descended. It is the second setting in the it is the setting in of the bright Arabian Nights. Arabian Nights. Arabian Nights. Yeah, Arabian Nights. Ah, now all the common things become uncommon and enchanted to me. All lamps are wonderful. All rings are talismans. Common flower pots are full of treasures, with a little earth scattered on the top. Trees are for Ali Baba to hide in. Beefsteaks are to thrown down into the valley of diamonds, that the precious stones may stick to them, and be carried by the eagles to their nest, whence the traders with loud cries will scare them. Tarts are made according to the recipes of the vizier's sons of Bussorah, who turned pastry cook after he was set down in his drawers at the gates of Damascus. Cobblers are all Mustafas, and in the habit of sewing up people cut into four pieces, to whom they are taken blindfold. It's getting more confusing now. As expected from a guy That is the Charles Dickens. Any iron ring let me into stone is the entrance to a cave which only waits for the magician, and the little fire and the nec- necromancy that will make the earth shake. All the dates imported all the dates imported come from the same tree as that unlucky date, with whose shell the merchant knocked out of the eye of the genie's invisible son. All olives are out of all olives are of the stock of that fresh fruit, concerning which the commander of the faithful overheard the boy conduct the vicious trial of the fraudulent olive merchant. All apples are akin to the apple purchased from the Sultan's gardener for 3 sequins, and which the tall black slave stole from the child. All dogs are associated with the dog. Really, a transformed man who jumped upon the baker's counter and put his paw onto the piece of bad money. All rice recalls the rice. All rice recalls the rice which the awful lady, who was a ghoul, could only peck by grains. Because of her nightly feast in the burial place, my very rocking horse, there he is, with his nostrils turned completely inside out, indicative of blood, should have a peg in his neck by virtue Tiref to fly away with me, as the wooden horse did the Prince of Persia in the sight of all his father's court. Yes, on every object that I recognize among those upper branches of my Christmas tree, I see this fairy light. When I wake in bed at daybreak on the cold, dark winter mornings, the white snow dimly beheld outside through the frost on the window pane, I hear Dinarzaid. Sister, sister, if you are yet awake, I pray you finish the history of the young king of Black Islands. Scheherazade replies, if my lord Sultan will suffer to live another day, sister, I will not only finish that, but tell you a more wonderful story yet. Then the gracious Sultan goes out, giving no orders for the execution, and we all three breathe again. At this side of my tree, I begin to see, cowering among the leaves, it may be born of turkey, or of pudding, or mince pie, or of these many fancy jumbled Robinson Crusoes on his deserted island. Philip Crawl among the monkeys, Sanford and Merton with Mr. Barlow, Mother Bunch and Damask, or it may be the result of indigestion, assisted by imagination and over-doctoring, a, pro- a prodigious nightmare. It is so exceedingly distinct. It was so exceedingly indistinct that I don't know why it's frightful, but I know it is. I can only make out what it is that an immense array of shapeless things which appear to be planted on a vast exaggeration of the lazy tongues that used to bear the toy soldiers, and to be slowly coming down close to my eyes and receding to an immeasurable distance. When it comes closest, it is worse. In connection with it, I descry resemblance of winter nights incredibly long, of being sent early to bed as a punishment for some small offense, and waking in 2 hours with the sensation of having been asleep 2 nights. of the laden hopelessness of morning ever dawning, and the oppression of a weight of remorse. And now I see a wonderful row of little rights. Little rights. No. And now I see a wonderful row of little lights rise smoothly out of the ground before a vast green curtain. Now a bell rings, a magic bell which still sounds in my ear unlike other bells, and music plays. Amidst a buzz of voices and vagrant smell of orange peel and oil, anon, the magic bell commands the music to cease, and the great green curtains roll itself up, anon, and the magic bell commands the music to cease, and the great green curtains roll itself up majestically, and the play begins. The devoted dog of Montargis avenges the death of his master, foully murdered by the forest of Bondi, and a humorous peasant with a red nose and a very nice little hat, whom I take from his hour forth to my bosom as a friend, remarks that the I'm not gonna read that word of that dog is indeed surprising, and evermore of this jocular conceit will live in my remembrance fresh and unfading, overtopping all possible jokes unto the end of time. For now, I learn with bitter tears how poor Jane Shore, dressed in all white and with her brown hair hanging down, went starving through the streets, or how George Barnwell killed the worthiest uncle that ever man had, and was afterwards so sorry for it that he ought to have been let off. Comes swift to comfort me, the pantomime, stupendous phenomenon, when clowns are shot from loaded mortars to the great chandelier. Bright constellation that it is, when harlequins, covered all over with scales of pure gold, twist and sparkle like amazing fish. When Pantaloon puts red-hot pokers in his pocket and cries, "Here's somebody coming," or taxes the clown with pretty larceny by saying, "Now I saw you do it." When everything is capable with the when everything is capable with the greatest ease of being changed into anything, and nothing is but thinking make it so. Now, too, I perceive my first experience of the deary sensation of being unable next day to get back to the dull, settled world, of wanting to live forever in the bright atmosphere I have quitted, of dotting on my little fairy with the wand-like celestial barber's pole, and pinning for a fairy immortality along with her. Ah, she comes back, with many shapes as my eyes wanders down the branches of my Christmas tree, and goes as often, and has never yet stayed by me. Out of this delight springs the toy theater. There it is, with its familiar proscenium and ladies in feathers in the boxes, and all its attendants' occupation with paste and glue and gum and watercolors. In the getting up of Miller and his men, in the getting up of the Miller and his men and Elizabeth, or the exile of Siberia, in spite of a new besetting accidents and failures, a teeming world of fancies so suggestive, a teeming world of fancies so suggestive and all-embracing that far below it on my Christmas tree, I see dark, dirty, real theaters in the daytime, adorned with these associations as with the greatest garlands of the rarest flowers, and charming me yet. But hark, the waits are playing, and they break my childish sleep. Childish sleep. Childish? Yeah. But halt, but hark, the waits are playing, and they break my childish sleep. What images do I associate with the Christmas music as I see them set forth on the Christmas tree? Known before all the others, keeping far apart from the others, they gather round my little bed. An angel, speaking to a group of shepherds in a field, some travelers with eyes uplifted, following a stars, a baby and a manager, a child in a spacious temple, talking with grave men, a solemn figure with a mild and beautiful face, raising a dead girl by the hand. Again, near a city gate, calling back the son of a widow on his bier to life. A crowd of people looking through the open roof of a chamber where he sits and letting down a sick person on a bed with ropes. The same in a tempest, walking on the water to a ship, again on a seashore, teaching a great multitude, again with a child upon his knee and other children around, again restoring sight to the blind, speech to the dumb, hearing to the deaf, health to the sick, strength to the lame, knowledge to the ignorant, again dying upon a cross, watched by armed soldiers. Thick darkness coming on, the earth beginning to shake, and the only one voice heard, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I don't know what I just read, but it sounded correct. Still, on the lower and maturer branches of the tree, Christmas associations clustered thick. School books shut up. School books shut up. Ovid and Virgil silence. The rule of three. With his cool, impertinent inquiries long disposed of, Terence and Plautus acted no more. In an arena of hollowed desks and forms, all chipped and notched and inked. Cricket bats, stumps, and balls left higher up, with the smell of trodden grass and softened noise of the shouts in the evening air. The tree is still fresh, still gay. If I no more come home at Christmas time, there will be boys and girls while the world lasts, and they do. Yonder they dance and play upon the branches of my tree. God bless them merrily, and my heart dances and play too. And I do come home at Christmas. We all do, or we all should. We all come home, or ought to come home, for a short holiday, the longer the better, from the great boarding school, where we are forever working at our arithmetical slates to take and give it a rest. As to going or visiting, where can we not go if we will? Where have we not been when we would? Starting our fancy from our Christmas tree. This is actually good advice for once. Yeah, you guys should spend time with your friends and family on Christmas Day. Okay. Away into the winter prospect, there are many such upon the tree. Give me a moment, actually. Okay, I'm back. Away into the winter prospect, there are many such upon the tree. On by low-lying misty grounds, through fens and fogs of long hills, winding dark as caverns between thick pantaloons. Pan, no wait, not pantaloons, plantations. Winding dark as caverns between thick plantations, almost shutting out the sparkling stars, so out on broad heights, until we stop at last with sudden silence at an avenue. The gate bell was a deep, half-awful sound in the frosty air. The gates swing open on his hinges, and as we drive up to a great house, the glancing lights grow larger in the windows. Half-awful sound in the frosty air. The gates swing open on its hinges, and as we drive up to a great house, the glancing lights grow larger in the windows, and the opposing rows of trees seem to fall solemnly back on either side, to give us place. At intervals all day, a frightened hare has shot across his wettened turf, or the distant clatter of a herd of deer trampling on the hard frost has, for the minute, crushed the silence too. Their watchful eyes beneath the fern may be shining now, if we could see them, like the icy dewdrops on the leaves. But they're still, and all is still, and so, the lights growing larger, and the trees falling back before us, and closing up again behind us, as if to forbid retreat, we come to the house. When does this thing end? Okay. This guy has written a whole 2,000 word essay describing a fucking Christmas tree. Could you believe that? Could you imagine? Bro sat down willingly and wrote like 3,000 fucking words about a Christmas tree he saw. See, this is why you should spend Christmas time with your friends and families or your lover, doing anything else except for something like this. This is peak autism. I'm sorry, Charles Dickens, but you need to find yourself a hobby, my man. Jesus Christ. Anyways, let's finish up this story. There is probably a smell of roasted chestnuts and other good comfortable things all the time, for we for we are telling winter stories, ghost stories, or more shame for us around the Christmas fire, and we have never stirred except to draw a little nearer to it. But no matter for that, we came to the house, and it is an old house, full of great chimneys where wood is burnt on an ancient dogs upon the hearth, and grim portraits lower distrustfully from the oaken panels of the wall. We are a middle-aged nobleman, and we make a generous supper with our host and hostess and their guests. And then we go to bed. You don't say. Our room is a very old room. It is hung with tapestry and whatever. It didn't actually say whatever. I just added that. It is hung with tapestry. We don't like the portrait, or we don't like the portrait of a cavalier in green over the fireplace. There are great black beams in the ceiling, and there is a great black bedstead supported at the foot by two great black figures who seem to have come off a couple of tombs in the old baronical church in the park for our particular accommodation. But we're not a superstitious nobleman, and we don't mind. Well, we dismiss our servant, lock the door, and sit before the fire in our dressing gown, mushing around a great many things. At length, we go to bed. Well, we can't sleep. We toss and tumble, and can't sleep. The embers on the hearth burn fitfully and make the room looks ghostly. We can't sleep. We can't help peeping over the counterpane and at the two black figures at the cavalier, that wicked-looking cavalier in green. In the flickering light, they seem to advance and retire, which, though we are not by any means a superstitious nobleman, is not agreeable. Well, we get nervous, more and more nervous. We say, "This is very foolish, but we can't stand this. We'll pretend to be ill and knock up somebody." Well, we're just going to do it. When the locked doors open, and there comes in a young woman, deadly pale, with long fair hair, who glides to the fire and sits down in the chair we have left there, wriggling their hands, wringing their hands. Yeah, wringing their hands. That's how I should read it. Wringing their hands. Then we notice that her clothes are wet. Our tongues cleave to the roof of our mouths. We can't speak, but we observe her accurately. Jesus Christ, I'm getting sleepy myself. Her clothes are wet. Her long hair is dabbled with moist mud. She is dressed in the fashion of 200 years ago, and she has at her girdle a bunch of rusty keys. Well, there she sits, and we can't even faint. We are in such a state about it. Presently she gets up and tries all the locks in the room with the rusty keys, which won't fit one of them. Then she fixes her eyes on the portrait of the cavalier in green and says, in a low, terrible voice, "The Stags knows it." That's my attempt of a low, terrible voice. After that, she wrings her hand again, passes it the best side, and goes out at the door. We hurry on our dressing gown, seize our pistols, and are following. When we find the door locked, we turn the key, look out into the dark gallery. No one's there. We wander away and try to find our servant. Can't be done. We pace the gallery till daybreak, then return to our deserted room, fall asleep, and are awakened by our servant and the shining sun. Well, we make a wretched breakfast, and all the company say we look queer. After breakfast, we go over the house with our host, and then we take him to the portrait of the cavalier in green. And then it all comes out. He was false to a young housekeeper who once attached to that family, and famous for her beauty, who drowned herself in a pond, and whose body was discovered after a long time, because the stags refused to drink the water. Since which it has been whispered that she traverses the house at midnight, trying the old locks with the rusty key. Well, we tell our host that of what we have seen, and shade comes over his features. He begs it may be hushed up, so it is. But it's all true. And we said so before we died. We are dead now. Too many responsible people. This went from Christmas tree to ghost storytelling in a snap of a finger. how this happens? We're gonna have to ask Charles Dickens. Bro smoked up b- b- a bunch of leaves before writing this shit. Fuck it out. Anyways, let us commence. There is no end to the old houses, with resounding galleries and dismal state bedchambers and haunted swings shut up for many years, through which we may ramble with an agreeable creeping up our back and encounter any number of ghosts, but reducible to a very few general types and classes. For ghosts have little originality and walk with a beaten track. Thus, it comes to pass that a certain room with a certain old hall, where a certain bad lord, baronet, knight, or gentleman shot himself, as has certain planks in the floor from which the blood will not be taken out. You may scrape and scrape, as the present owner has done, or plane and plane as his father did, or scrub and scrub as his grandfather did, or burn and burn with strong acids as his great grandfather did, but the blood will still be no redder, no paler, no more and no less, always just the same. Thus, in such another house there is a haunted door that never will keep open, or another door that will never keep shut, or a haunted sound of a spinning wheel, or a hammer, or a footstep, or a cry, or a sign, or a horse tramp, or the rattling of a chain. Or else there is a turret clock which, at the midnight hour, strikes 13 when the head of the family is going to die, or a shadowy, immovable black carriage which at such a time is always seen by somebody waiting near the great gates of in the stable yard. Or thus it came to pass how Lady Mary went to pay a visit to pay a visit at a large wild house in the Scottish Highlands, and being fatigued with her long journey, retired to bed early, and innocently said next morning at the breakfast table, "How odd to have so late a party last night in this remote place, and not to tell me of it before I went to bed." Then everyone asked Lady Mary what she meant. Then Lady Mary replied, "Why, all night long the carriages were driving around and round the terrace underneath my window." Then the owner of the house turned pale, and so did his lady. And Charles MacDoodle of MacDoodle signed to Lady Mary to say no more, and everyone was silent. After breakfast, Charles MacDoodle told Lady Mary that it was a tradition in the family that those rumbling carriages on the terrace betokened death. And so it proved, for 2 months afterwards, the lady of the mansion died, and Lady Mary, who was a maid of honor at court, often told this story to the old Queen Charlotte. By this token that the old king always said, "Eh? What? Ghosts? No such thing, no such thing," and never left off saying so until he went to bed. Somehow, Christmas tree description turned into ghost story readings. My god, this guy has next to zero consistency when he writes stories. But I shouldn't say that, should I? Because um, his story is considered a traditional Christmas story, and I have not written anything for the past y- 5 years of my life. Anyways, moving on. Or a friend of somebody's whom most of us know, when he was a young man at college, had a particular friend with whom he made a compact that, if it were possible for the spirit to return to this earth after its separation from the body, he of the twain who first died should reappear to the other. In course of time, this compact was forgotten by our friend, the two young men having progressed in life and taken diverging paths that were wide asunder. But one night, many years afterwards, our friends being in the north of England and staying for the night in an inn of the Yorkshire moors, happened to look out of bed, and there in the moonlight, leaning on a bureau near the window, steadfastly regarding him, saw his old colleague friend, college, saw his old college friend, the appearance being solemnly addressed, replied, in a kind of whisper, but very audibly, "Do not come near me. I am dead. I am here to redeem my promise. I come from another world, but may not disclose its secrets." Then the whole form, becoming paler, melted, as it were, into the moonlight and faded away. Wow. Ghost stories, everyone. Or there was the daughter of the first occupier and the pictures. Oh my god. You know what? I'm done with the ghost stories. I'm just gonna do something here. I'm just gonna skip a few parts here and right onto the part where the Christmas tree is mentioned again, because the Christmas tree is not mentioned like 4 or 5 paragraphs ago, and this guy's just telling ghost stories now. Legion is the name of the German castles where we sit alone to wait for the spectre. Where we are shown into a room made comparatively cheerful for our reception, where we glance around the shadows thrown on the blank walls by the crackling fire, where we feel very lonely when the village innkeeper and his pretty daughter have retired after laying down a fresh store of wood upon the hearth, and setting forth on the small table such supper cheer as a cold roast capon, bread, grapes, and a flank of old Rhine wine. And where, about the small hours of the night, we come into the knowledge of diverse supernatural mysteries. Legion is the name of it's what the fuck? We're still in ghost stories. Legion is the name of the haunted German students, in whose society we draw yet nearer to the fire, while this schoolboy in the corner opens his eyes wide and round and flies off into footstool he has chosen for his seat, when the door accidentally blows open. Vast is the crop of such fruit, shining on our Christmas tree, in blossom, utmost at the very top, ripening all down the bounds. Among the later toys and fancies hanging there, as idle often and less pure, Be the images once associated with the sweet old waits, the softens music in the night, even unalterable, encircled by the social thoughts of Christmas time, still let the benignant figure of my childhood stand unchanged in every cheerful image and suggestion that the season brings. May the bright star that rested above the poor roof be the star of all the Christian world. A moment's pause, O vanishing tree, of which the lower bounds are dark to me as yet, and let me look once more. I know there are blank spaces on thy branches, where eyes that I have loved have shone and smiled, from which they are departed, but far above I see the razor of the dead girl and the widow's son, and God is good. bro, bro, Tara casually threw in God is good, and thought we didn't know it would notice. If age be hiding from for me in the unseen portion of thy gown downward growth, oh may I, with a grey head, turn a child's heart to that figure yet, and a child's trustfulness and confidence. Now, the tree is decorated with bright merriment and song and dance and cheerfulness, and they are welcome. Innocent and welcome be they ever held beneath the branches of the Christmas tree, which cast no gloomy shadow. But as it sinks into the ground, I hear a whisper going through the leaves. This in commemoration of the law of love and kindness, mercy and compassion. This in resemblance of me. And that is the end of the story. Fuck. I need a I need a minute after that. Oh my god. I feel I'm speechless. What? uh, what's up with this guy? What's this guy problem? Why does he write his stories like this? Oh my god. What? You know, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, assassins. Why the fuck does him? Oh wait, it is Christmas where I am. Yay, Merry Christmas. Wow. Perfect timing. It's Christmas Day where I am already. Wow. Can you believe it, guys? It's Christmas. Yay. Oh my god, it's Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. Well, to be honest, I think that should be yeah, to be honest, that should be where I end today's story reading session. I hope I hope you guys learned some kind of lesson today. Whatever it was. The lesson I learned is don't do drugs before writing Christmas stories. Charles Dickens obviously did. But yeah. Well, I do want to talk to you guys a bit still, so how y'all doing? You good? You guys got anything cool for Christmas? Wasn't much else to do in the 1800s in Britain. Hey, isn't much things to do in current Britain anyways too. Just kidding, just kidding. Joking, joking, joking. I'm joking. Assassins. I did a short gadget stream when this was Christmas at my time and sacked hard. So yeah. Hey, nice. Let's go. That Christmas gacha luck coming in. Santa sharing some of that Christmas magic. Casually blowing some of that Christmas magic on into your gacha game or whatever. Amazing. Oh, right. I live in the future. I forgot about that. Well, don't worry. You can open your Christmas presents early. I won't tell anyone. Unless you're counted unless you immediately makes it onto the naughty list by doing that. But yeah. From my from yeah, I know you from your POV. I live in the past, but for some others, for a lot others of other people out there, I live in the future. Shush. Why didn't you warn them about 9/11, huh? Huh? Why didn't you live 9 hours in the future? Why didn't you warn the Americans about 9/11? Huh? 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 You know what, Zaf? Fair. Fair. Well, I don't know what my presence is. I hope it's something good. It's getting so freaking cold here. Somehow it's like cold even when I'm fully indoors with everything closed out. Brr. But all right, I guess I should end my stream here really. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And good night if it's your bedtime. Feel free to use the VOD to help yourself fall asleep again if you find it if you find my stream to be useful in that regards. I'm awkward. I'm just being awkward now. Yeah. Anyways, bye. Bye. Yep. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Bye bye. Hey, hey, hey.